A couple sits at a kitchen table late at night. Two laptops are open. One paycheck hit on Friday. The other hit on Monday. They made more money this month than they ever imagined in their 20s. And yet they are fighting over groceries, not because they are irresponsible, not because they are lazy, because somewhere along the way, more income stopped creating freedom and started creating dependence. Most people believe two incomes automatically multiply wealth. 60,000 plus 60,000 should feel like success. It should feel safe. But for a surprising number of couples, the second paycheck does not build wealth. It quietly finances a more expensive version of survival. The first apartment becomes too small. The used car becomes unreliable. Dinner out becomes normal because both people are too exhausted to cook. Then come the subscriptions, the furniture financing, the upgraded phones, the dog, the weekend trips, the extra closet space, the delivery apps, the daycare waitlist. The income doubled. The obligations tripled. That is the trap. A couple making $120,000 together can easily end up with less margin than a single person making $70,000 alone, not because they spend recklessly, but because shared income changes what feels reasonable. Before living together, each person may have survived on surprisingly little: one-bedroom apartment, cheap gym membership, older car, fewer expectations, more flexibility. Then something changes. The combined income creates a false sense of abundance. Suddenly, the upgraded apartment feels affordable because there are now two paychecks. The new SUV payment feels manageable because there are two paychecks. The expensive neighborhood feels justified because there are two paychecks. But those two paychecks are no longer optional. They become required. And once a household becomes dependent on both incomes, even a small disruption can start to feel like a threat. The most dangerous spending decisions rarely feel dangerous when they happen. They feel deserved. A couple moves in together and suddenly they are not comparing expenses to what they used to spend alone. They are comparing them to what they think a couple should have. A better apartment, a safer neighborhood, a newer car with more room, a king bed instead of a queen, better furniture because now guests come over, nicer groceries because they are building a life together. Each decision sounds reasonable by itself. That is why the trap is so hard to see. A couple paying $1,400 each for separate apartments might move into a $3,200 apartment together and think they are still saving money. Technically, they are. But they also just raised the baseline cost of their lives by hundreds of dollars every month. Then the new apartment needs furniture. Then the new neighborhood comes with higher parking costs, higher utility bills, higher expectations, higher social pressure. The rent went up once. The lifestyle expanded everywhere else. You can see this play out in small moments. A couple walks through a luxury apartment model on a Saturday afternoon. The leasing agent talks about the rooftop pool, the package lockers, the fitness center, the dog wash station. They tell themselves it is only a few $100s more per month. What they do not calculate is that the apartment changes the rest of their behavior. Now they order takeout more because the neighborhood is full of expensive restaurants. Now they pay more for parking. Now they spend more on furniture because cheap furniture looks wrong in the new place. Now they start spending to match the environment around them. The apartment was never just the apartment. It was an identity upgrade with recurring costs. And once those costs become normal, they stop feeling like choices. That is the hidden rule most couples miss. The second paycheck does not just increase income. It lowers resistance to permanent expenses. A single person with one paycheck often hesitates before adding a new monthly payment. A dual-income household becomes more confident, more optimistic, more willing to say yes, until one income disappears. Then all those manageable expenses suddenly look very different. The luxury apartment becomes a source of panic. The car payment becomes a deadline. The furniture financing becomes embarrassing. The subscription list starts to look like a list of small mistakes. And because both people agree to the upgrades, there's nobody to blame, just quiet resentment. One person starts saying they never wanted the bigger place. The other reminds them they both agreed. One starts bringing up overtime hours. The other starts talking about exhaustion. A fight about a grocery bill is never about groceries for very long. It is usually about fear. Fear that the life they built only works under perfect conditions. Fear that one layoff, one illness, one pregnancy, one bad year could expose how little room they actually have. For decades, the official story has been that higher household income creates stability. But in practice, higher household income often creates larger obligations first and stability second, sometimes never. Then comes the moment most couples never model for: a pregnancy, a layoff, a parent gets sick, a child is born with medical needs. One person burns out, One person wants to go back to school. One person simply cannot keep doing the commute, the hours, the office politics, and the exhaustion anymore. This is where the second paycheck reveals what it really was. Not extra money, infrastructure. The household was not using that second income to get ahead. It was using it to hold the system together. And nowhere is that more obvious than childcare. A couple can bring home an extra $60,000 a year from the second job and still discover that after taxes, commuting, daycare, work clothes, convenience spending, takeout, and outsourcing basic life tasks, there is almost nothing left. In some cities, infant daycare alone can cost $2,000 to $3,500 per month. Add a second child, and suddenly, one person's entire paycheck is passing straight through the household and into the daycare center. The raise did not make them richer. It made the daycare center richer. There is a scene that plays out in parking lots all over the country. One parent rushes out of work at 5:12. Traffic is worse than usual. Daycare closes at 6,000. Every minute after that costs another fee. The child is tired. Dinner still has to be made. Laundry is waiting at home. Somebody forgot to pay the electric bill, and both people are still expected to wake up tomorrow and do it all again. That is the contradiction. The second income was supposed to create flexibility. Instead, it can create a household schedule so fragile that even a flat tire feels like a crisis. Historically, families could absorb shocks because one person's labor was not tied to an employer. One parent might stay home. Grandparents might live nearby. Housing was cheaper relative to income. Communities were more local. The system had more slack in it. Today, many families are operating with no slack at all. Everything is optimized. Every dollar has a destination before it arrives. Every hour is spoken for. Every missed paycheck creates immediate pressure. And when people say they cannot afford to leave a job, what they often mean is not that they would starve tomorrow. They mean the machine they built only works if both people keep feeding it. That changes the emotional dynamic of work. A bad boss becomes harder to leave. A long commute becomes harder to question. A job that destroys your health becomes something you endure because the mortgage depends on it. One partner may secretly want to cut back to part-time, start a business, care for a parent, or stay home with a child for a few years, but the numbers no longer allow it. The household that looked successful from the outside becomes a household negotiating with reality every month, and eventually, people stop asking what they want. They start asking what they can survive. Then, another shift happens. The money stops feeling personal. When couples move everything into one account, they often think they are creating unity. In some ways, they are. Bills are easier to pay. Transfers disappear. Everything is in one place. But something else disappears too. Visibility. A person spending $80 on lunch delivery every few days does not notice it because it feels small compared to the combined balance. The other person starts buying things online late at night because the purchases do not feel connected to one specific paycheck anymore. Streaming services stack up. Subscriptions renew. A gym membership nobody uses keeps billing. Convenience spending becomes invisible because nobody feels like they are spending their money. They are spending our money. That sounds healthy, until our money starts disappearing faster than either person expected. There is a strange psychological shift that happens when individual spending gets diluted inside a larger pool. People become less careful, not because they are irresponsible, but because the immediate pain of spending gets weaker. One person quietly spends $400 a month on small conveniences. The other spends $600 on hobbies, subscriptions, lunches, ride shares, random purchases, and weekend spending. Neither thinks they are the problem because neither purchase ever feels large enough to trigger alarm. Together, they are leaking $12,000 a year. That is the cost of a used car. A Roth IRA contribution for two people, several mortgage payments, a meaningful emergency fund. Instead, it disappears into little moments nobody remembers. You can picture the scene. One partner is scrolling through the credit card statement at the kitchen counter after the kids are asleep. The room is quiet except for the dishwasher running in the background. There is no single shocking purchase, just page after page of small ones. Food delivery, Target, Amazon, coffee, parking apps, forgotten subscriptions, pharmacy runs, school fundraiser, pet supplies, another dinner out because nobody had the energy to cook. Nothing looks reckless. That is what makes it dangerous. The hidden rule is that couples often become less accountable as they become more financially connected. The larger the pool of money becomes, the easier it is for spending to hide inside it. And when financial stress finally appears, the argument is rarely about math. It becomes about character. One person feels controlled. The other feels betrayed. One says, "We need to track every dollar." The other hears, "You cannot be trusted." One says, "We make too much money to still feel broke." The other starts carrying quiet shame. The account balance becomes emotional. That is why so many couples avoid looking too closely, because once they do, they are forced to admit something uncomfortable. The problem is not that they do not earn enough. The problem is that nobody is steering. And a household without a financial system eventually starts operating on mood, guilt, exhaustion, and impulse. That works for a while, until something goes wrong. This is the part nobody talks about when they talk about making it. The more expensive the household becomes, the less freedom either person has. A couple can be earning $180,000 a year and still feel trapped because every decision now has a price attached to it. Quitting a bad job is no longer just a career choice. It is a threat to the mortgage. Asking for fewer hours is no longer about balance. It means losing health insurance. Taking a risk on a business idea no longer feels exciting. It feels irresponsible. The household becomes allergic to uncertainty. That is the contradiction. People work harder to create a better life, but the more they build around two incomes, the more dangerous change becomes. A man sits in his car outside the office parking garage at 7:15 in the morning. He hates the job. He has hated it for 3 years. He wants to leave. He wants to do something else. But he also knows there is a daycare payment due next week, a car payment after that, summer camp in June, and a mortgage that only works if both direct deposits arrive on time. So he stays. A woman lies awake at night doing the math in her head. What if she cut back to part-time? What if she stayed home for a year? What if they moved somewhere cheaper? Every option feels emotionally attractive for a moment. Then the numbers arrive. And the numbers say no. This is why so many dual-income couples look stable right up until the moment they are not. They have income, but no resilience. They have assets, but no flexibility. They have 2 careers, but no room for either person to fail, rest, pivot, or recover. The fragility hides inside the success. Historically, wealth meant optionality. It meant having enough margin that you could survive a bad year, turn down a bad opportunity, or walk away from something that was damaging you. Today, many households have the opposite. They have just enough income to sustain a lifestyle they cannot interrupt. That is not wealth. That is maintenance. And the solution people usually reach for first often makes it worse. Another raise, another promotion, more hours, a side hustle, a larger bonus. More money temporarily relieves the pressure, but if spending rises with it, the household just becomes dependent on an even larger number. The ceiling rises. So does the floor. That is why some of the calmest households are not the ones with the highest income. They are the ones with the lowest required income. The couple living on one paycheck and saving the other may not look rich. They may drive older cars. They may live in a smaller house than their friends. They may skip certain luxuries, but they have something increasingly rare: breathing room. One person can leave a bad job. One person can stay home with a child. One person can recover from burnout without the entire household collapsing. They are not forced to monetize every hour of their lives just to maintain the image of success. Because the real luxury is not the bigger house. It is being able to say no. Most couples do not get trapped because they are reckless. They get trapped because nobody warned them that 2 incomes can quietly become 1 obligation. The system is hard to fix because every institution benefits when households need both people working at full speed. Employers get more labor. Banks get larger mortgages. Car companies sell larger vehicles. Daycare costs rise to absorb more household income. Entire industries now assume 2 paychecks are available. That is why so many people feel like they are doing everything right and still falling behind. The rules changed, and nobody told them. The couples who adapt tend to do one thing differently. They build their lives around lower fixed costs before they build them around higher income. They ask harder questions earlier. What can one paycheck cover? What expenses are permanent? What would happen if one of us had to stop working for a year? What are we actually buying, and what are we trying to feel? Because the goal is not to prove you can afford the lifestyle. The goal is to make sure the lifestyle does not own you. That may mean living below what the bank says you can afford. It may mean keeping one older car. It may mean saying no to the bigger house, the luxury apartment, the private school, the constant upgrades. It may also mean building a structure where money has a job. A shared account for bills. separate personal accounts for guilt-free spending, automatic transfers into savings before lifestyle inflation has a chance to absorb the difference. Not because romance failed, because pressure changes people, and systems matter most when emotions are running high. The households that survive are usually not the ones with the highest income. They are the ones with the most margin. Because when one person loses a job, burns out, gets sick, wants to stay home with a child, care for a parent, or simply wants their life back, margin is what turns a crisis into a choice. Without it, love starts feeling like a joint liability. With it, love has room to breathe. If you want a practical framework for building that structure, download my Yours, Mine, and Ours account structure template. It can help you create a system that protects both your relationship and your finances before pressure forces the issue.